Gun shop counters are heating up again, and once more, the usual media circles are losing their minds. Just a few months ago, racks were fully stocked and barely touched. Now, those same shelves are picked clean. And the anti-gun crowd up in Washington, D.C. is scrambling to figure out what the heck is going on. Is this just another flash of panic buying, or are we seeing something deeper? Could Donald Trump's 2025 policy agenda be the spark that Second Amendment supporters have been waiting for? In today's video, we're diving into what's really behind this new surge in firearm demand, how Trump's proposed reforms are quietly energizing millions of gun owners across the country, and why the same folks who've spent years calling for tighter gun control are starting to realize the cultural momentum may be shifting for good. Things really started ramping up right after the election results settled. I've been on the phone with dealers coast to coast, from the sun-baked shops in Arizona to the gun counters in western Pennsylvania, and they're all saying the same thing. Weekdays are staying steady, but the second there's a new rumor about ATF policy changes or federal agency shakeups, weekend traffic explodes. But this time, it's not blind panic, it's strategic. Buyers are snagging dependable carry pistols, bulk boxes of 9mm, and essential spare parts before prices spike. Online sellers are reporting record numbers for everything from red dot sights to small parts like Glock firing pin springs. Some manufacturers are already showing stronger first-quarter earnings than they did in last year's second quarter, and we're not even into summer yet. If your favorite online retailer is starting to show more out-of-stock listings than usual, drop a comment and let us know. What's disappearing in your area? Are your local shops keeping up, or are products flying off the shelves? So, what's fueling the fire this time? It all circles back to the most significant proposed change in federal firearms oversight in years: Trump's plan to pull the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives out from under the Department of Justice and put it under the Treasury Department. That's not just shuffling offices, it's a major shift in how the agency operates. It would limit the ATF's power to issue sudden rule changes and stop it from blindsiding gun owners with last-minute bans or arbitrary definitions. No more surprise brace rulings, and no more dancing around the legal definition of a receiver. With tighter reins and clearer accountability, firearms owners are feeling something rare these days: stability. And that's changing the way people buy. Folks are investing in quality gear instead of panic stockpiling. American-made bolt guns are selling better than foreign imports. And stripped AR lowers are moving again, not because of fear, but because people feel confident that the rules aren't changing overnight. Alongside that, Trump signed an executive order directing the Department of Justice to go through all existing gun regulations and eliminate anything that doesn't line up with a strict Second Amendment interpretation. The big media outlets were quick to call it reckless, but among gun owners, it was felt immediately. Wait times for suppressors started dropping. Folks who were holding off on customizing their firearms are back at the bench, tuning up their pistol builds and getting creative with upgrades. When federal pressure starts to ease up, the gun world tends to come alive again. And this isn't just theoretical, we're already seeing hardware that was once pushed into the shadows come roaring back. Case in point, the Franklin Armory RS7. This was the firearm the ATF tried to kill back in 2019 by labeling it a short-barreled shotgun. Franklin took it to court and won. Now, thanks to renewed Second Amendment momentum under Trump, firearms like the RS7 are reclaiming their space in the market. This platform is available in either 5.56 NATO or 300 blackout, features a 7.5-inch barrel, and uses a straight-cut rifled bore that neatly avoids classification under the National Firearms Act. Add in an optional binary trigger, and you've got a compact, high-performance system ideal for close quarters or home defense. No tax stamp, no paperwork delays, no ATF surprises. Priced at roughly $1,100, it's become a go-to option not just for gearheads and collectors, but for everyday shooters walking in and asking for it by name. And they're not just browsing, they're walking out with receipts in hand. Let's get into the topic of national concealed carry reciprocity. The usual suspects in the gun control lobby are panicking, claiming it'll turn places like Times Square into some kind of armed free-for-all. But most gun owners see it for what it really is: basic common sense. You can drive from coast to coast with the same driver's license, yet your right to carry a firearm legally vanishes the moment you cross a state border. That's not safety, that's politics. And folks in restrictive states like New York and New Jersey know change is coming. They're already gearing up, snagging slimline pistols, locking in training sessions, and ordering Kydex rigs before inventory gets scarce. Subcompact 9mm handguns from major makers like Smith & Wesson, Springfield Armory, and Sig Sauer are flying off dealer shelves so fast that some manufacturers have gone to double shifts just to keep up. Even holster makers are feeling the pressure. Leather shops are months behind on custom orders. Ammunition, too, is tightening up again. Defensive loads like Gold Dot and Federal HST are being limited to 1 box per buyer at several gun counters. The bill hasn't even cleared the Senate yet, but the buzz is already pushing buyers into action. It's clear. People aren't waiting for permission, they're preparing now. Meanwhile, while national carry grabs the headlines, there's another development sending waves through the gun community: a push to restore Second Amendment rights to nonviolent felons who've turned their lives around. Gun control groups are sounding the alarm, but let's be honest, this proposal isn't about arming dangerous criminals. It's about giving a second chance to people who made minor legal mistakes 20 years ago. Folks who bounced a check, ran into tax issues, or got caught up in nonviolent charges back in the early 2000s, many of whom have since raised families, held steady jobs, and paid their debt to society. Now, they're finally being given a chance to take responsibility for their own protection again. That shift is clearly visible in current buying trends. Gun shops are reporting higher demand for reliable pump-action shotguns, revolvers with 4-inch barrels, and practical carbines built for home defense. These aren't black market weapons, they're simple, effective firearms trusted by blue-collar Americans who just want a fair shot at defending themselves and their families. Custom gun building is also seeing a strong revival. While the previous administration tried to choke off the home-built market with restrictions on so-called ghost guns, those rules are hanging by a thread in court. And with Trump's legal team drafting new guidance, many expect a return to the original interpretation that an unfinished frame or lower is just a hunk of plastic or metal until it's machined. That possibility has already sparked a rush in the builder community. Within 48 hours of the news breaking, jig kits and router accessories were back-ordered everywhere. Sales that would normally span 3 months were racked up in just over a week. And despite what opponents claim, home builders aren't criminals. The ones I know keep detailed records, serialize their lowers, and would fully cooperate with law enforcement if a legitimate warrant ever showed up. What they refuse to do is surrender their right to build a legal firearm for personal use without registering it with a federal database. That spirit, lawful, self-reliant, and quietly uncompromising, is the very backbone of what James Madison meant when he wrote the Second Amendment with no asterisk. That spirit is finally regaining momentum. Thanks to Trump's Supreme Court picks, the Bruen decision drove a stake into the heart of arbitrary gun laws. It confirmed the right to carry doesn't stop at your front porch and forced states to justify restrictions based on the actual historical context of the Constitution. Most simply can't meet that standard. As a result, we're seeing a domino effect. State bans on magazine capacities, waiting periods, and no resale policies are collapsing under legal pressure. Gun owners are taking notice. They're speaking up, not just at the ballot box, but with their bank accounts. Standard capacity magazines are in higher demand than the latest tech gadgets. Manufacturers that once pulled back on innovation are charging into SHOT Show with confidence again, launching fresh rifle platforms and design upgrades that haven't been seen in years. Now let's shift gears and talk about tariffs. Predictably, outlets like The Guardian are claiming these trade measures will wreck the gun industry, but they're missing the bigger picture. Yes, fees on raw materials like copper and steel do nudge production costs upward, but they've also lit a fire under domestic manufacturing. In fact, several medium-sized machine shops in places like Texas and Ohio have already announced plans to expand production, cutting AR bolts, machining receivers, and turning out quality parts from American milled billets. That means more skilled labor jobs and more products stamped with "Made in the United States." Sure, nobody loves paying an extra $25 for a range bag, but that's a small price next to the $100 processing fees that anti-gun states like California slap on every legal transfer. When those same lawmakers tax ammunition background checks and then complain about tariffs hurting the working class, they practically hand pro-Second Amendment companies a golden marketing opportunity. Even brands that traditionally lean on overseas suppliers are adjusting instead of folding. One well-known cable lock company inked a contract with a Wisconsin-based steel foundry just 2 weeks after Trump announced a 90-day pause on certain tariffs. Is it more costly? Absolutely. But now they're branding their products as 100% American, forged, and shooters, despite the caricatures, are more than happy to spend a few dollars extra to support companies not beholden to regimes that lock up priests and float spy balloons over Iowa. At the same time, the usual media outlets are beating the drum, insisting that more legally armed citizens will only fuel more violence. But even their own data contradicts that nonsense. The worst spikes in violent crime happened in jurisdictions that defunded law enforcement, tied prosecutors' hands, and shuttered gun shops during lockdowns. By contrast, rural counties with high concealed carry rates are seeing robbery numbers drop to levels not recorded in decades. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's crime stats, lawfully armed citizens stop violent criminals thousands of times each year, far more often than the handful of tragic incidents that mainstream news outlets obsess over. And while stories about an everyday person with a firearm stopping a threat rarely make the evening news, they spread through word of mouth, and they're inspiring more and more Americans to train and prepare. These aren't just bearded range guys either. It's single moms, trauma nurses, truck drivers, real people who understand that calling 911 doesn't summon help instantly. And this isn't your typical panic buy scenario either. In the past, folks would just grab whatever handgun or rifle was still sitting on the wall. But now, they're planning ahead. Buyers are prioritizing ammunition with robust supply chains, 9mm, 5.56, 12-gauge buckshot, and picking up serious kit night sights, weapon-mounted flashlights, plate carriers, and med kits. Firearms training centers from Florida to the mountains of Idaho are booked solid well into fall. This isn't fear, it's preparation. And a nation of trained, equipped citizens doesn't need to fire a single round to serve as a powerful deterrent to tyranny. Of course, anti-gun activists claim this renewed surge in legal firearms sales will dump more stolen guns into neighborhoods. What they refuse to mention is this. Most firearms used in crimes were already stolen, often taken from locked vehicles, because carry laws prevent lawful owners from keeping them on their person. National reciprocity would let legal carriers travel from Maine to Missouri without needing to disarm at every state line, dramatically reducing vehicle break-ins. But the very groups who scream about stolen firearms are the ones blocking the solution that would reduce them. Rational thinking left that debate a long time ago. Still, the firearm industry keeps rolling forward. Ammunition factories are hiring new staff. Holster companies are expanding their shifts. Small-town banks throughout the Midwest are funding new indoor ranges at a record pace. And after years of activist investors blackballing gun companies, venture capital is finally returning, flowing into businesses that can't build rifles fast enough to meet demand. Even the big-name retailers that considered shrinking their firearms sections after the 2020 riots have quietly reversed course. When they saw customers spending their money elsewhere, profits drowned out every editorial opinion. And while all of this is building momentum, federal law enforcement priorities are changing too. Under the Trump administration, the Department of Justice has dumped the bogus gun violence is a disease narrative and turned its focus back toward actual criminals, not carbines and suppressors. That Surgeon General soundbite calling firearms a public health threat? Gone overnight. In its place, initiatives promoting counseling and mental health resources, not confiscation schemes. Police morale has already seen a noticeable bump. Chiefs know they're dealing with an administration that treats them like allies, not legal liabilities. When rank-and-file officers feel supported, case clearance rates go up. And believe it or not, locking up actual criminals reduces repeat offenses a whole lot faster than banning 30-round magazines ever could. Now, about those tariffs supposedly making safety devices unaffordable, there's a silver lining there too. American lock manufacturers are lobbying lawmakers for smart carve-outs or tax breaks that reward domestic production. In fact, a bill is already on the table that would let you deduct the full cost of any safety accessory built right here in the United States. If that passes, you could pick up a top-tier American-made firearm lock, write it off come tax season, and still come out ahead compared to buying a flimsy import. When free market policy meets common sense legislation, domestic production always rises to the top. Even the import scene is adjusting without missing a beat. Turkey's still holding its title as the go-to source for reliable scatterguns, and Austria keeps turning out the tried-and-true Glock lineup without slowing down. But thanks to updated trade agreements, some foreign-made sporting arms are slipping into low-duty brackets as long as final assembly gets done right here on American soil. That means more stateside jobs, quicker turnaround for service and warranty work, and less of that condescending sneer from the usual critics who lose their minds over anything that looks too tactical. At the same time, anti-Second Amendment groups are waving around polling numbers, claiming that Americans are terrified of rising crime and ready to surrender their gun rights. What they don't talk about intentionally is the exact same surveys showing record-setting numbers of first-time buyers from historically underrepresented communities. Want proof? Just swing by any indoor range in Atlanta on a Thursday night. What you'll see isn't some stereotype, it's hardworking women, black professionals, single moms, recent college grads, all stepping into their right to self-protection. This isn't about clinging to the past, it's about expanding freedom. The right to bear arms isn't just a legacy right, it's a civil right. And every day, more people are stepping up and claiming it for themselves. By this point, the strategy laid out by President Trump for 2025 is coming into focus. It's not just about trimming back the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, firearms and explosives power grab. It's a multi-layered approach. He's pushing for national reciprocity, working to erase unconstitutional restrictions on home-built firearms, stacking the federal bench with judges who respect the plain meaning of the Second Amendment, and laying the groundwork for a manufacturing revival right here at home. This isn't just policy, it's a complete reframing of how the government sees law-abiding gun owners. And that kind of clarity is powerful. After years of unpredictable rules and political ping-pong, folks are finally feeling confident enough to reinvest in their gear and their training. Personally, I've been stocking up on small rifle primers whenever I can find them, and I just pulled the trigger pun intended on that optics Ready CZ pistol I've been eyeballing since last fall. How about you? Are you eyeing a new red dot optic? Maybe upgrading your plate carrier? Or finally bringing home that lever action you've been daydreaming about for the deer season? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear what's on your list. And hey, if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your shooting buddies, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Appreciate you hanging with me. See you at the range.